te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. E haere aki nei, we can reveal the Stratford Covid cases were only discovered after someone reported the sick family to authorities, and it's taken days to talk them into getting tested. More cases are on the cards. Several close contacts have Covid symptoms, with test results expected back in the next hour. Empty Auckland offices mean empty CBD shops. Retailers fear it could be February before business gets back to normal. The Black Caps will face off against Australia for World Cup glory on Monday, but without star batsman Devon Conway, who's already pulled up stumps. And in Christchurch, the alpacas and piglets are out on their best show, but there is no audience.
RNZ News at 5 o'clock. Kia ora, I'm Marama Tipole. The government is not considering tightening restrictions in Taranaki at this stage, despite confirmation of 6 COVID cases in the town of Stratford. Speaking at a media conference this afternoon, the Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson has said health authorities have advised there is no need currently to put the region into level 3.
The reason for the position we have right now is that we know how the case came to be or how the virus came to be in Stratford. We know that it is currently confined to one family and one household. But as the day goes on, more interviews are undertaken, more investigations are done, and the public health team would update their information.
Grant Robertson says 2 of the Stratford cases had recently been in Auckland, with one travelling there to pick up the other person and drive back to Stratford. Only 1 of the 3 adults in the family was vaccinated. The Ministry of Health is reporting 201 new community cases today, including 181 in Auckland, 15 in Waikato, 4 in Northland, and 1 of the 6 in Taranaki. The Health Ministry has listed more locations in Taranaki. They are the Best Value Store in Melville and Hamilton on November the 5th and 10th, the Warehouse in Hawera on October the 30th, and New World Stratford and Countdown Stratford both on November the 3rd. The Ministry of Health maintains it is calling every self-isolating COVID-positive person every single day. The New Zealand Herald has reported on a 68-year-old man whose family says he was coughing up blood for days but was not told to go to hospital. He later died. The Director of Public Health, Caroline McElnay, says she has been reassured by health staff that they make contact with each case.
They've assured me that they do ring daily. They go through a number of questions, specifically asking for symptoms and offering additional health professional support if needed.
Caroline McElnay says if anyone's condition is getting worse, they should ask for help. Sources observing negotiations at the COP26 climate summit say objections from Australia means references to phasing out fossil fuels will almost certainly be cut from the final agreement. A draft agreement released yesterday for the first time explicitly mentioned coal and fossil fuels. It was seen as a small but important breakthrough at the talks in Scotland. However, RNZ understand Australia, which is a major exporter and consumer of coal, along with Saudi Arabia and Russia, have torpedoed it. More than 40 countries, including 5 of the biggest coal power users last week, pledged to phase it out. The Public Service Commissioner has launched an investigation into the government's housing agency following accusations it's failed to uphold basic standards of decency and conduct. At issue are Kāinga Ora staff emails about a paid advertorial featuring now Labour MP Arena Williams while she was a candidate. Once staff became aware there was discussion about public money being used to raise a politician's profile and concerns from Ms Williams herself she may be accused of electioneering. One staffer concluded, "We can just act as though we don't know anything." Peter Hughes says political neutrality and trustworthiness are bottom lines for the public service, and the matters that have been raised go to trust and confidence in a key public service agency. An injured korora or little blue penguin has died after being rescued from the site of a controversial marina on Waiheke Island. The bird's death comes days after 32 protesters were served a blanket injunction notice in the High Court limiting access to the site. It's been developed by Kennedy Point Boat Harbour Limited. Mauri o Te Moana environmentalist Bianca Ranson says protesters have repeatedly criticised the marina because of concerns for the korora.
So, we predicted all of this, and we've been trying to get the attention of Auckland Council and DOC and challenging their inadequate penguin plans as they've rolled out over the last few months. And now we're seeing the effects of construction on our wildlife in that bay.
Bianca Ranson says the injunction aims to further separate tangata whenua from Pūtiki Bay. It's coming up to 5 minutes past 5. Tim Seifert will replace the injured wicket-keeper batter Devon Conway in the Black Caps lineup for Monday morning's T20 World Cup final against Australia in Dubai. Conway has a self-inflicted broken hand, which he suffered after punching his bat following his dismissal in the semi-final win over England. Seifert hasn't played since the Black Caps were beaten by Pakistan in their tournament opener 2 weeks ago, but coach Gary Stead says he's a ready-made replacement.
It's likely that Tim will come into the side and then we'll just balance out the order of what we think's right. Dev's obviously been batting at 4, whether we bring Glenn Phillips up 1 and put Syphon behind him, it's something Kane and I just have to work through the next day or so.
Coach Ian Foster insists Bowden Barrett hasn't replaced Richie Mo'unga as the All Blacks' first choice first 5. Barrett has been selected to start against Ireland in Dublin on Sunday morning, with Foster picking his strongest possible side. However, Foster denies Barrett is now number 1.
I've got 2 quality 10s and I'm really happy with both of them. In a messy game, Richie showed some great touches last week and showed what a quality footballer he is. But we just feel that right now for what we want to do early, that boat is the one.
7-time MotoGP world champion Valentino Rossi will down the curtain on a 25-year racing career when he competes in his final race at the Valencia Grand Prix this weekend. And Brazil's beaten Colombia 1-0 to become the first South American side to qualify for next year's Football World Cup in Qatar. That's the news.
Tomorrow morning, director Jane Campion on her new movie, her first in over a decade, The Power of the Dog. 2 Neil's documentary about a Japanese whaling village where the sea gave and the sea took away. And 2/3 of Sole Mio give us a taste of the group's new album. Ko Kim Hillaho, join me tomorrow morning from 8 on RNZ National.
And having a look at our short forecast from Met Service to midnight Saturday, Northland to Taranaki, including Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and Taupo. Showers today, periods of rain for tomorrow, heavy at times, with possible thunderstorms in the west. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, fine today, but scattered rain about Hawke's Bay later. Mostly cloudy with a few showers for tomorrow. Whanganui, Taihape and Manawatu, also Wairarapa. The odd shower turning to rain for a time tomorrow. Severe gale northwesterlies at times about Wairarapa. Horowhenua to Wellington, also Nelson. Occasional rain, severe gale northwesterlies at times in Wellington. Marlborough and Canterbury, fine, but periods of rain tomorrow, severe gale northwesterlies about the high country. Otago and Southland, scattered showers today, some possibly heavy and thundery, and rain tomorrow, possibly heavy about eastern Otago. Bulla to Fiordland, periods of rain, heavy and possibly thundery at times too. And for the Chatham Islands, cloudy periods and, you guessed it, rain late tomorrow. It's coming up to 8 minutes past 5.
Nā mihi marama, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki checkpoint I tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Health workers have been out in force in Stratford today as hundreds of people lined up for COVID tests. Testing sites were inundated after it was revealed last night that 6 members of a Taranaki family, including 3 children under the age of 12, had tested positive for the virus. Our reporter Jimmy Illingham has more.
While Taranaki iwi call for the region to go into lockdown and politicians ponder their next move, people in Stratford joined queues and waited. Early birds showed up well before the 10 a.m. opening at a drive-in site run by Ngā Ruahine Iwi Health Services and the District Health Board. By lunchtime, the line of cars stretched around a corner. At a walk-up testing site on the main street, the queues were also snaking their way up the road, with many waiting in the rain. Some had symptoms, some didn't, and some were under orders to get a test.
Work told me to. Yeah. No symptoms or anything? Or a cough. That's about it. But so it's a good idea. It's a good thing. Like the bro said, we need to keep safe. So it's obviously here in the Taranaki now, so we need to deal with it. So do what we need to do.
Among those manning the Ngāti Ruanui site was Māori Party co-leader Debbie Ngārewa-Paka. She says many people are worried, particularly about possible locations of interest.
There's been a bit of a delay for them to have been here and everything, so they just want some certainty in their own community.
Debbie Ngārewa-Paka says hundreds of people have taken tests at the site.
We've just had queues out in this horrible weather. We feel it's horrible for them, so yeah, it's just been full on. So we had people waiting here when we got here, and then had some delays with our laboratory stuff getting here. So yeah, it's been a bit of a long day.
A block away at the other testing site, people waiting in their cars, such as Brendan, thought getting tested was the right thing to do.
For our kids, for the education, yeah, so just to find out too that it's in Stratford for the first time. It's like the flu. Once you got it, it's never going to go away again, so we've got to learn to live with it. So the faster we all learn to get on and live with it, then the better we'll be.
Health workers there were doing about 80 tests an hour. At the same site yesterday, less than 30 tests were administered, although there was a surge last weekend when the positive wastewater result was confirmed. Ngā Ruahine Iwi Health Services General Manager Warren Nichols says when he arrived an hour before the site's 10 a.m. opening, carloads of people were already waiting.
Oh, it's brilliant because surveillance is really important, where we help to understand if there's wider outbreak into the community. We encourage everybody to come for a test over the coming days, absolutely.
The 6 people infected weren't using the COVID Tracer app. Shortly after midday, 3 Taranaki locations of interest were released. 2 more were added later. They are New World and Countdown supermarkets in Stratford, Unichem Mackay's Pharmacy in Stratford, and the Warehouse and Bunnings in Hawera. The co-owner of Unichem Mackay's Pharmacy, Michelle Whittington, says she was notified by health officials this morning that her business was a location of interest.
It kind of means business as usual. All the forms that people had filled in for contact tracing have already been sent off, so people will be contacted through that, or if they've scanned in.
Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson revealed today one of the 6 positive cases travelled to Auckland to pick up a family member and took them back to Taranaki to live with them. Only one of the 6 is vaccinated.
Obviously, they were in touch with the healthcare system over the last week or so, and through that period of time, I am aware that they were asked to be tested, but they declined that. However, obviously, as they became, or member of the family became more unwell, that resistance dropped away.
Health officials say the 6 infected people were reluctant to be tested. Little reluctance was evident in Stratford today, and with vaccine rates in the district lagging behind the rest of Taranaki and the nationwide rate, it's no wonder. After the surge in testing, it should be known within days whether the virus has spread.
It took some serious detective work and a tip-off to crack the case of COVID in the Taranaki town of Stratford. Checkpoint can reveal the 6 COVID cases were only discovered after someone in the community reported the sick family to health authorities after days of positive wastewater tests but no confirmed cases. The mini-cluster has been linked to Auckland's outbreak. Someone travelled to the city to bring a family member back to Stratford. Despite calls for people to get tested, health authorities were led to the cluster not by a positive test, but by a tip-off after someone noticed they were ill and had recently travelled. But it took days to confirm they had COVID because the family initially refused to be tested. There's several locations of interest, including supermarkets, a hardware store and repeated visits to a local pharmacy. Taranaki DHB Medical Officer of Health, Dr Jonathan Jarman, is urging people to get tested.
So we have to focus on the people most likely to have the infection. Of course, those are the people who are symptomatic. So the advice, the strong advice we're giving is that anyone in Taranaki with symptoms should get a test. And the reason we're saying that is there's a lot of movement in Taranaki. People work in Stratford, they live in New Plymouth, the other way around, Harbour Road, Stratford. So, in fact, we're one big community, and it makes a lot of sense. Anyone who has symptoms should get a test and stay at home until they get the results.
There has been a number of locations of interest go up already. Are you concerned about how active these people have been in the last few days?
Well, the family that we're working, the people we're working with have actually been isolating themselves, and so they've been very much keeping to themselves largely. And there will be some locations of interest, but our feeling is that it's a sort of low to medium public health risk, and we're sort of cautiously optimistic. But part of the contact tracing is also identifying people who are close contacts, and we're following up with these people at the moment, and some of them are symptomatic, and we're just awaiting for the results that hopefully will come in today.
And how many are considered to be symptomatic and how many close contacts?
At the moment, we're looking at possibly 3 who are symptomatic, or one person may have recovered but has been symptomatic. The results will be available, like, for example, the test that we're doing here in Taranaki. We're hoping to have that by about 5:30.
What's the situation with Wairarapa and contacts?
Some of the close contacts are now in the Wairarapa, and we have organised tests through the Regional Public Health Service for those people.
Do they normally reside there?
Sorry, I don't know exactly where they normally reside. I just know that they're not here at the moment.
Do you think there's a chance that there could be missing cases in these links? Because we're told that a family member went to pick up someone else from Auckland, and that was last month. And obviously that's some time ago, and now we've got these cases. Are there cases in between?
No, it's a direct link with the people that were in Auckland for a period of time and then came back here.
So I know you have said that you found them through disease detective work. What do you mean by that?
Well, we were trying to find the source of the wastewater test. So the wastewater test is a very broad brush thing, and it's only a backup for person tests. So we were getting these wastewater tests that were showing viral fragments. So we knew that someone potentially who was infectious was actually contributing to that wastewater scheme in Stratford. And then we were trying to find out exactly where a positive person may have come from. Was it a visitor? Was it people that were related to the garden and arts festivals that were happening at the time? Because there were a lot of visitors to the region. Or was it someone or a group of people that were resident in Stratford? So as the information became available, we sort of thought at one time it was more likely to be a visitor. Then there was more wastewater tests that became available, and then we suddenly realised it was more likely that the family or the group of people were residents in Stratford, and that's when we started to go really hard in trying to track down people who potentially had the infection.
So how did you track them down? Because you've also said that they were reluctant to get tested, right? And that changed over a period of time. They then were convinced to have a test. So what brought them to your attention in the first place? Did they seek medical assistance?
No, we heard a sort of a complaint from someone who was aware of the issue with this group of people.
Do you mean someone noticed that they were sick in the community?
Yes, and there had been recent travel to Auckland.
Okay. They made a number of visits to the pharmacy. Is that where they came to your attention?
No, we were aware of that before, and we actually had been working with them over several days to encourage them to have the testing.
Yeah, so when did you first identify them? I mean, how long have you been in discussions with them?
We were aware earlier this week that there were potentially there was a symptomatic person had been recently to Auckland, but bearing in mind that we get these we get these types of reports all the time. So we were just working and just encouraging them to have a test. And then when it became more obvious that there was an undetected source for the infection, that's when we really started encouraging them to have the testing. And it was when one of the family members became particularly unwell that I think the penny dropped and they decided that they should all be tested.
I really want to get the sequence of events right here, Doctor. So when you say that someone reported potentially a symptomatic person had travelled to Auckland, so someone who was already unwell left the region to Auckland?
No, they after being in Auckland, they'd come back and then they developed a flu-like illness.
Right, and someone in the community became aware that they were unwell?
Yes.
And they reported it to the DHB?
To the public health unit, yes.
And that is when you followed up with the family?
Repeatedly, yes.
How frustrating is that for you?
Well, I think it's really the bread and butter of public health is that we work with all sorts of people, and I totally acknowledge that sometimes the test is an unpleasant process, and also people can be fearful about the results. Some people have religious objections to the test. That's the sort of the art and science of public health, is working with these people and encouraging them to go through and have a test.
Can you tell us anything more about this particular group's reluctance to get tested? What was their concern or fear?
We haven't got to the bottom of it, and we just acknowledge and accept that they were reluctant, and I think ever so pleased that at the end they did come forward and they did have the test, and we have found the source of the positive wastewater test in Stratford.
Yeah, how widespread do you think this issue is in terms of people who are ill and not wanting to get tested?
I think it's likely to be quite common. And I think for that reason, if we can make the testing process better, I think it will be a lot easier for people. Saliva tests are something that are being explored, but bearing in mind, saliva tests are only for people without symptoms. If you've got symptoms, you still need to have the PCR test with the swab up the nose.
Given everything you know, how wide do you think this is potentially spread? Can you tell yet?
Well, last night I was cautiously optimistic, and I think at the moment I would say that it's a low to medium public health risk based on what we know, but that could change at 5:30 tonight.
Given how you found this family, right? Someone has made the call to pass the information on. What do you want to say to members of the community? Because obviously you've managed to find this family, intervene, offer assistance. So what would you say to others in the community about their responsibilities and, kind of being good citizens?
I think as much as possible we need to get on top of this infection if it comes into the community. So it's really, really important to protect not only their family members but also to other people in the community. And I think I need to point out that with this little cluster, one person was sick enough to be admitted to hospital. It was the sickest that he's ever been. So this isn't just a mild flu-like illness. This can be a disease that can kill people. So I think it's really best if people can just come forward and have the test. And it's a little bit unpleasant, but it's got so many benefits, not only for them, but also their family.
Is the person in hospital vaccinated?
We actually haven't fully ascertained the vaccination status for this cluster.
And do you have any concerns as we move to more open travel and borders for your region, given that your vaccination rates aren't as high as other areas?
Yes, I do have concerns, but I think my concerns are just in a general way. The virus is coming to us. It's coming to all of New Zealand. We know that. It's just a matter of time when it happens. We really want to keep it away as long as we can so we can get our vaccination levels up high. But we're going to have COVID amongst us in the very near future. It's going to become reality.
And that's the Taranaki DHB Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Jonathan Jarman. And you would have heard there, he says he's expecting test results around 5:30 tonight. There are 3 symptomatic close contacts of this mini cluster in Taranaki. We've been in contact with the Ministry of Health and asked if they're going to make those results public. They've said that their next reporting time will be at 1 o'clock tomorrow. It is 24 minutes past 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Kia ora rawatu mo te whakarongo mai e haere nei, New Zealand will face off against its arch nemesis in the T20 World Cup finals. While retail is back in level 3.2, Auckland's CBD businesses say they're floundering as office workers stay home, leaving the city deserted. Figures from Heart of the City show inner city businesses have lost around $1 billion since borders were shut last February. Roadworks and parking issues are compounding their problems. And as reporter Louise Tanuth and camera operator Marika Habazi report, business owners fear they're in for a rocky ride until schools return in late January 2022 as Aucklanders flee the city for Christmas.
4 lease signs are a common window display in Tamaki Makoto's city centre. The streets are far from bustling, despite retail opening up this week. When we visited Ueno Sunglasses on Queen Street, sales manager Victoria Yu was hopeful business would be booming. It's anything but.
Not sure about yesterday, but today so far is still zero. Yeah, no customer here, yeah.
You heard it right, 0 customers. That's because she says most of their clients are businessmen or students, and they're all still working at home and going to their nearest mall instead. With just over a month to go till Christmas, there's little chance workers will come back to their desks before the new year. A few doors down at Lania Clothing, they tell me they've been lucky with a few keen regulars ready to shop again. Others are sticking to online. But owner Maria Allen thinks CBD shops are far safer than malls.
We're probably at an advantage because there's not masses of people in a confined space like a mall, you know. There's, So I actually think it would be a great place to come and shop.
At Ema Cuisine on Fort Street, Yael Shohart says without workers, it's a dire situation.
We rely on the office workers. Monday to Friday daytime, we're busy, breakfast, morning tea, lunches. This is our bread and butter.
And businesses in the CBD have higher overheads.
We still have city rents and we're sitting on outdoor seating. Outdoor seating costs twice as much as suburb outdoor seating. This is 140 a square metre, it's 70 in the suburbs, okay? Go further out, it's even cheaper.
Yael Shohart thinks banks should be doing more for businesses rather than relying on the government.
No one has pointed the finger at the banks helping us. I mean, we're all on the edge of survival and some people are not surviving. I went to the bank and asked for a mortgage because my mortgage is on the business. It's my house, but it's for the business. Yeah? I asked for a mortgage holiday and they said I needed to fill some hardship forms which will affect my credit, and they wanted me to see me like this on my last penny before they approved it.
Viv Beck from Heart of the City says CBD businesses will need financial support carried over into the red alert system, as the rules won't change the situation the city centre is facing.
In red, at 90% vaccination, we're unclear why they're still saying people are encouraged to work from home, because our understanding is that by getting in behind the vaccination program and getting those high rates up quickly, that was going to enable things to get back to a level that would sustain our businesses.
She also wants to see some investment into regenerating the CBD after months out of action.
They're doing it, for example, in Sydney. There's money allocated for vouchers, for spending to support impacted businesses. All of those things are seen as really valuable things to do. So we are talking to the government about that.
She says the 1st of December couldn't come sooner for some hospitality trading. But Mandy Lusk from Vivace Restaurant and Bar says dreams of the usual busy festive season are gone.
We've spoken to quite a few of our firms. They've said they're not expecting their staff to come back till the schools go back next year, which is the end of January, beginning of February. The last resurgence package that we got a couple of weeks ago, most of it went on paying our PAYE, and the rest of it went on refunding the last Christmas functions that we did have booked, all of which have cancelled now.
In level 3.2, they've got the wage subsidy, resurgence payment and a kind landlord keeping them afloat. But when the red alert arrives, that'll all go. And with Auckland's border eventually opening, she's worried the city will become even more empty this summer.
This year, I think any Aucklanders that traditionally stayed around are sure as heck not going to if they open those borders. And I just don't know what we'll do. I really don't. You know, someone said to me the other day, "Why are you smiling?" I'm just like, it's either that or cry. You know.
As for the Prime Minister's short visit this week,
So disheartening. It was very distressing that the Prime Minister didn't even bother to come into the CBD Auckland, which ultimately is carrying the biggest burden, I think, of this whole COVID response. And it would have been nice to actually see a bit of political support down here.
when questioned at today's press conference about what further support could be offered for CBD businesses, Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson acknowledged it's extra hard for them, but says they're doing all they can.
More than $5.5 billion of economic support has gone out since the 17th of August via both the wage subsidy scheme and the resurgence support payment. As of today, that resurgence support payment has doubled. We are doing our best to support people. Our schemes are set up so that your decline in revenue is what defines how much assistance you get. That's what people will be receiving.
As for whether they're having any discussions with banks about how they can help, he says that's not up to them.
We've maintained pretty constant contact with the banks over the course of this outbreak to monitor the number of hardship type applications that are being put forward. The banks tell us that they're not at the volumes they were last time and that they're being dealt with by banks. And remember, the only reason the government became involved was effectively as an underwriter with a concern that there would be an effect on the overall financial and banking system. There is nothing like that this time, so therefore that really is fundamentally down to an arrangement between those businesses and their banks.
Meanwhile, it's not just the CBD that's hurting. Louise Tanuth joins us live from Parnell. Kia ora, Louise.
Kia ora, Lisa. Well, I'm here at Rumi Cuisine here in Parnell with Reza Rumi. Now, Reza's been talking to businesses around this area. A lot of them have access to outdoor courtyard dining. Now, Reza, what have you been hearing in terms of the frustrations from businesses in your industry around the area about 3.2 and its limitations for you?
For us, it's very confusing, all the rules that's right now with hospitality sector. Because we do have access to outdoor dining, and we cannot understand why we cannot use our outdoor dining for our customer. If people from different households, up to 25 people, can gather outside in a park at the beach and do picnic and have lunch or afternoon tea together, why not these people coming to us? So we have this facility, we can use our facility, and we can promise the government that we can look after our customer. We can make sure that social distancing be in a place and all other rules that apply to us.
And you're quite confident you could make it work here. You've got quite a large capacity. It's all outdoors. How would you kind of make things work in terms of making sure that people were keeping that distancing and limiting the contact with your staff?
It's 25 people. That's easy for us to control. We did it before. After first lockdown, second lockdown, because we had limitation with the group of 10, I guess that was it before. We can do the same. It's easy for us people in hospitality. We just need the government to trust us as well. We trust government. We apply to all the rules. We don't want to break any rules. We just need someone come talk to us and explain more about these rules, how they get these number 25 people, why people can go to retail but cannot come to us. If people can have coffee in a coffee outdoor the coffee shop, why the same people cannot come to us? We can serve them. and we can promise that we look after them. So we look after all the rules and regulation. We don't want to break anything. We just need more people coming from government talk to us and tell us, okay, why we cannot do this at the moment.
And just lastly, just building on that, the financial impact has been huge for your business. This is some of your usually most busiest months. Your Christmas functions are no longer. Exactly. What's been the impact for you like that?
We lost revenue a lot during the lockdown. October, November, December, they are crucial months for hospitality people. It's a time that we are busy, we save some money, we put some cash on the side for our next year winter, which is the month is quiet, so we have some cash. That's our main concern now, because we lost all this good time now. We don't know what we're going to do next year without any cash for winter time, which is more quiet. Do we get more support during the next winter time from the government? They're going to come and say, okay, you didn't make any money last summer, we're going to help you this winter. Is this promise is going to happen or not?
Thanks so much for your time this evening. That's Reza Rumi from Rumi Cuisine here in Parnell.
Thank
Lisa.
you so much.
Thanks, Louise. That is Louise Tanous live from Parnell there. It's about 25 minutes to 6. Kia mau tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Homai o Whakaro, really interested in your thoughts on that one. As Reza was saying, they can't have customers, even though it's got an outdoor courtyard, which is pretty big. He reckons he can seat 25 people there easily, and you're allowed to mix with that number of people if you're out and about having a coffee or walking in the park. What do you reckon? Should outdoor cafes be allowed to operate in their outdoor areas? Pātui mai, text me on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or you can email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Memories of the 2015 Cricket World Cup final flashed into the minds of some Black Cap fans this morning when it was confirmed Australia had booked their place as New Zealand's opponent in the T20 World Cup final. 6 years ago in Melbourne, it was the Australians who were celebrating 50-over success. In Dubai, both nations will be chasing their first men's T20 World Cup title on Monday morning. However, the Black Caps have been dealt a blow after a moment of madness robbed the side of a key player days out from the Trans-Tasman showdown. Ane te kairi poata, Felicity Reid.
Steve Smith fittingly hits the winning runs, and Australia are champions of the world.
What a great win in front of a record crowd here at the MCG. Australia beat New Zealand. They've been the two best teams in the tournament.
Those closing moments of the 2015 World Cup final will still make some New Zealand cricket fans shudder. In a different format with some different players, the Black Caps will be aiming for a different result. A result all-rounder Jimmy Neesham hopes is closer to the T20 series win recorded when the Australians were on our shores this year.
Even though the Australia team is a slightly different look team from the one we played in New Zealand at the start of the summer, I think it's still, the same unit, and we'll probably take confidence from that result into the game. But having said that, it's T20 cricket. One player can take the game away from you on the day.
One of those match-winning players the Black Caps won't be able to call on is Devon Conway. After playing a crucial role in the semi-final win over England, the wicketkeeper batsman is out of the title decider with a broken right hand. Coach Gary Stead says Conway suffered the injury punching his bat in disappointment after his dismissal yesterday.
You're not going to find anyone more disappointed right now than what Dev is himself. He's truly gutted, certainly remorseful around it. It's an honest mistake that he's made. And he knows that, in a way, it's having an impact on our team as well.
New Zealand does have a ready replacement in Tim Seifert. Prior to Conway taking over for New Zealand's T20 side in March, Seifert had been the team's first-choice gloveman. Instead says it's a logical move.
It's likely that Tim will come into the side and then we'll just balance out the order of what we think's right. Dev's obviously been batting at 4. Whether we bring Glenn Phillips up 1 and put Seif in behind him, it's something Kane and I just have to work through the next day or so.
Meanwhile, Australia's wicketkeeper Matthew Wade is making headlines for different reasons today. With 3 sixes and 3 balls, Wade smashed Australia to a 5-wicket victory in their semi-final against Pakistan. The Australians navigated the highest successful chase of the 2021 T20 World Cup of 177 runs, after slumping to 96 for 5 in the 13th over. Needing 20 runs from the final 10 balls, Wade stepped up in what he admits could have been his last international game.
I was a little bit nervous coming into the game and knowing that potentially it could be my last opportunity to represent Australia, and just wanted to do well and really wanted us to win this game and give us an opportunity to win the whole thing. We've got a great bunch of guys in that dressing room and guys that I've played for a long period of time with. So, yeah, just really, I feel like this game was probably harder nerves-wise than maybe what the final will be.
Cricket fans on both sides of the Tasman will have to be up in the early hours of Monday morning to watch history being made in the UAE. However, closer to home, New Zealand Cricket have announced the international summer schedule for the Black Caps and White Ferns today, with Auckland missing out on any matches before the Women's World Cup in April.
And that was Felicity Reid reporting. E te iwi e haere nei e a checkpoint. Hospitality New Zealand's call to action. Canterbury's top alpaca, sheep and pigs head out for Anniversary Day, but without their adoring fans. And the All Blacks prepare for their Northern Tour showdown against Ireland. Homai o whakaaro, we'd love to hear from you about anything you've heard on the programme this evening. Text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or the email address is checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Time now for the headlines. A little bit late. Ko marama anō tēnei.
Thank you, Lisa. Whaftai lava. The 6 COVID cases in Stratford were only discovered after someone in the community reported the sick family to health authorities. The cluster has been linked to Auckland's outbreak. Someone travelled to the city to bring a family member back to Stratford. Taranaki DHB Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Jonathan Jarman, told Checkpoint the family mostly kept to itself and it's hoped the public health risk is low. He says the family was reluctant to get tested, but when one of them became very unwell, they realised it was time they all got tested for COVID-19. Stratford people have turned out in their hundreds today to take COVID-19 tests at a drive-in site run by Ngā Ruahine Iwi Health Services and the DHB. Health workers were doing about 80 tests an hour. At the same site yesterday, fewer than 30 tests were administered. The government is not considering tightening restrictions in Taranaki at this stage. The Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson says health authorities have advised there is no need currently to put the region into level 3. An injured korora, or little blue penguin, has died after being rescued from the site of a controversial marina on Waiheke Island. The bird's death comes days after 32 protesters were served a blanket injunction notice in the High Court limiting access to the site. It's been developed by Kennedy Point Boat Harbour Limited. Sources observing negotiations at the COP26 Climate Summit say objections from Australia means references to phasing out fossil fuels will almost certainly be cut from the final agreement. A draft agreement released yesterday for the first time explicitly mentioned coal and fossil fuels. It was seen as a small but important breakthrough at the talks in Scotland. However, RNZ understands Australia, which is a major exporter and consumer of coal, along with Saudi Arabia and Russia, have torpedoed it. That's our headlines. Our next news and sport update is at 6.
Kia ora rā e ho, nau mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei, ko taku hoa e nai nei, ko Nona Peltier, who's here to talk business. Let's start with Infratil. So it's made a record half-year profit. What kind of moolah are we talking, Nona?
Well, we're talking $1 billion, a little bit more than that, in fact. Well, the reason they made that much is because they sold their stake in a company called Tilt Renewables, and their gain out of that was $1 billion. So that helped the bottom line. But it's not just that. The company, as you may know, has a diverse range of investments, including Vodafone New Zealand, Trustpower, data centres, renewable energy, healthcare organisations, and part of Wellington Airport as well. So the stake that they have in those range of investments, so they don't own them outright, that delivered a 28% increase in their underlying profit to just over $250 million. So this is a company that's doing pretty well, let's just say, and they've got a lot of money to spend. They have access to something like $2 billion on their balance sheet, which they can use to expand. They said that they're going to be careful with their cash. They're not going to just blow it, but they're looking at more investment in renewable energy, in data centers, and also in healthcare.
Well, perhaps the flip side of that record is potentially the warehouse. They've been hit by the COVID lockdown. What's the damage there?
Yeah, so we're only looking at their first quarter sales here, and they have taken a significant hit. So that's in the 3 months ended September, October. They basically dropped 15%, that's their sales overall, to $630.7 million. And what's interesting there is that at the same time, their online sales more than doubled to 190 million, accounting for a third of all of their sales. What they're hoping now is that people will come into their stores, especially, of course, in Auckland, where they've reopened, and they're hoping that they'll spend up large in store because well, they need it. If they don't get a good uplift in November and December, that's their busy time. It's going to show in their first half for certain. Their shops in Auckland are going to be open longer. They say that they've got a strong stock position across all their brands, and they're certainly hoping people are going to come out and shop.
Okay, what Friday fun do you have for us from the markets, Nona?
Yeah, the markets are a little bit sick today, I have to say. The local top 50 index, it fell almost 1%. That was 119 points down to 12,908. The New Zealand dollar was also a little bit weaker in late trading. It dropped just below 70 US cents, 96.1 Australian and 52.4 pence. And just as a matter of note, Infratil's share price rose nearly 1% on that report, while the warehouse, because I guess of the outlook there, it rose 1.25%.
Thanks, Nona. Ka kite, that's Nona Peltier with Business News. We're ready to open. That's the message hospitality has for the government. Venues across the country are taking part in a campaign calling for them to welcome customers again, saying the safety measures they have in place mean COVID transmissions can be kept low. Hospitality New Zealand CEO Julie White joins me now. Kia ora, Julie. Make your case. Why do you reckon hospitality should be open right now?
Kia ora, Lisa, and to everyone else listening. Look, we've done our bit. It's as simple as that. We've stayed shut. We've basically accumulated debt. We have invested in COVID-19 health protocols. We know what to do and we know how to operate safely. So there's a real call from the public around even getting us open. So we're saying, why wait? The vaccine rates are actually up in Auckland. So we actually think, let's get going. It's really important that we open sooner rather than later. Interestingly enough, what we're hearing from our members is that they're ready and so are customers. And the problem with the customers is that they just don't know whether to book. So they don't know whether to book their Christmas parties. They don't know whether to book their Christmas holidays. So we're calling on the government is to say that, look, we know what to do. We know how to do it safely. So let's just get going so we can just move on. So that's our
Julie,
call.
Just to be clear on this, so Auckland, we're at level 3, step 2, right? Are you saying that right now in Auckland that restaurants and cafes could throw open the doors safely from tomorrow?
Absolutely, Lisa. With the traffic light system, or what they call the protection framework, is that we already know how to operate really safely. So we know about basically we've got the settings on being separated, being seated. So there's no reason that we couldn't even move to alert level, what the current alert level 2 is. It's a really confined and highly compliant environment when you go and eat at a restaurant.
So you don't want any limits at all? You want to open up tomorrow with no size limits on the number of customers that you can have?
For their venue absolutely. We're saying that bring it on. The government's done a great job. They've lent in. They've had lots of vaccinators out there, quite close to the 90%. So that was always their indication. We're ready to go. We've got all the safety measures. That's what we're hearing from our members to say what we do as a business, we look after people. So that's our first priority is to welcome people back, and we will welcome them back safely. So that's our call, is that, The community wants it. We want it. Enough is enough. We actually need to get opened.
So at the moment, we're not in the traffic light system. We haven't reached the level of vaccination that the government says we need to move over into that system.
Yeah.
And we also don't have vaccine certificates. So would your members be mixing vaccinated and unvaccinated people together? Would they ask for information? We don't have a certificate to prove it right now.
I think that we can actually operate in a really safe environment, and what we've been working with the government is actually around how this would work. So the government has always been really clear as around getting as many people as vaccinated. The 90% is the number that the government came up with. We obviously have to live with COVID now. I think we all agree with that, Lisa. So we're actually thinking it's time now that we actually live with, and our members are willing to do as much as they can do to keep people safe. They actually understand. They've been consulting with staff. Majority of the staff are vaccinated. So we're actually thinking it's time now that we just move on and get opened.
So while we've been talking, Julie, we've had some feedback from a listener, and it's an interesting question.
Please.
They say it's hard because when people drink alcohol, they forget stuff. So how are you going to deal with that, they wonder?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't think 100% of people that actually applies to. Just keeping in mind the safest environment for when you're actually consuming alcohol is actually on-prem. The actual danger actually comes when it's not regulated, when you're drinking at home. So that's what we do for a living. We do what they call host responsibility. So we actually have trained staff to deal with that.
Really appreciate your time this evening. That's Julie White, who's Hospitality New Zealand's CEO. They are calling for hospitality, restaurants, cafes, bars to open immediately while Auckland is in its current level. They say it can do it safely. Let us know what you think. Text us on 2101. It is 11 minutes to 6. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoints on RNZ National. Hei Muriaki ina pita pita koerero. After the news at 6, Stratford's mayor joins us live as COVID creeps into his community. Perched right on the edge of Auckland's boundary, businesses in Mangawhai say they're desperate for the COVID-19 border to be busted for Christmas. And even most locals, who usually love the peace and quiet, say it's time to let the city slickers through. Nick Trubridge and cameraman Nick Munro report.
I'm standing at the border separating Mangawhai from the Auckland region. Now, locals here would usually enjoy not having Aucklanders in their neck of the woods, but at the moment, they're crying out to see them back.
Yeah, it's been pretty hard. Definitely, the businesses have suffered and stuff. And I know that we kind of go on about Aucklanders being here and it being too busy. But now, it's kind of time.
Shannon Moore helps manage the cakery in Mangawhai's main village, where the raspberry white choc brownie is a must. She says people here in Mangawhai have changed their tune about wanting Aucklanders back, with 12 weeks without them really starting to burn.
I think it's both. It's a little bit scary either way, but then the thing is, I think we're ready now. Most of the people around here, it's it's a bit boring, and people are feeling pretty low. I work at a couple of other places around here too, and it's just people's mood, definitely feeling it.
We wander through the village and drop in on Kyle Robinson, who runs Threadbox with wife Ali.
The locals are super supportive, but the Aucklanders themselves and everyone else that travels up here, it's a massive destination, like a holiday beach town. So we really need those borders to open, and we need the Aucklanders and everyone else up here.
But this isn't just another yarn about businesses and how tough things are. The locals, who don't necessarily rely on Aucklanders, say the struggle is real.
I think Aucklanders need to get out of the city and bring their children up. A lot of them have places here, and so I think it's important that they are able to get away and come and enjoy the beach and the community.
And it goes both ways.
One reason is we've all got family in Auckland that we haven't seen for 4 or 5 months, and it'd be great having them up here again.
Life's a beach up here, but the locals concede Auckland, lockdown city, has been anything but.
They've had a really difficult time coping, kids not at school and all the restrictions put on them. Yes, so as Sue said, they need to get up here and enjoy the beach.
But not everyone's on the same page. Some say keep the boundary.
Not at the moment.
Why not?
Well, once Auckland is opened up, the virus is going to spread out of control for many, many months.
But this chap eventually does concede Aucklanders do need a reprieve.
Auckland has got to open up, especially before Christmas, except it's going to make the virus go wild throughout the country. It is a political decision to open it up. Auckland would not have put up with it being closed up any longer. They just would have taken off and left town.
But the overriding feeling is the time has come.
We've got family and friends in Auckland, and yeah, absolutely, yeah, definitely. But it's a tough one, but yeah, we've got to find a way forward. Yeah, and that doesn't divide communities and families, and yeah.
As we leave town, we drive past another local. It's not difficult to get people to speak here. They all have a view, and it's mostly let them through.
What about Aucklanders coming up here? Mangawhai, I've been here for several years. Mangawhai sucks when the Aucklanders are here, and we all hate it because they ruin it. But everybody has free will, and I do respect people's ability to live and, find happiness.
And an open border doesn't just mean good things for Aucklanders. It also means more options for the town's surfers. And man, they're passionate.
Can't go to my beaches that I'm 4 minutes away and they say it's a threat, it's a danger, you're all going to die. It's insanity, it's stupid and ridiculous to the highest degree.
Time will tell whether the boundary's busted, so Aucklanders can enjoy the barrels too.
And the video that goes with the yarn from our two Nicks will go up on our webpage. Do check it out. The Canterbury Anniversary Day public holiday is known as Show Day in the region, the day country comes to town, but not today. For the second time since World War II, there was no AMP show on in Christchurch today. As our reporter Rachel Graham found out, while the showgrounds were certainly very different from normal, they were far from quiet.
The agricultural showgrounds are normally a throng of people on Canterbury Anniversary Day, with about 60,000 people squeezing in to eat hot dogs, look at the best chickens in the district and sit on a tractor they have no need for. Today, the streets of the showgrounds were empty, with the show cancelled due to COVID-19. But a few key parts of the show went ahead, just with no members of the public there to see them. Pagan Kauroria travelled up from Alexandra to take part in the senior sharing and wall handling event. She says the lack of a crowd wasn't too much of an issue for her.
Of course, when the crowd's in here at the Canterbury shares, because it's the AMP show, it can take you nearly 10 minutes to get from the board back up and from down, trying to squeeze through people. But I suppose in a shearing final, the atmosphere is amazing when there's heaps of people in the stadium. So the finals I've found have been quite different because there's not a lot of noise and stuff in the background.
Other events underway today were the alpaca, sheep and pig competitions. Earlier in the week, they also put on indoor dog trials, a smaller version of the farmyard for school groups and a dairy goat competition. Anne Rogers, the convener of the alpaca section, says it was important to go ahead with the competitions, even without spectators.
Really, really important. And so what goes with the placings is if you listen to the judges, they're telling you why they're putting those animals up first. So it's a really good learning tool for the exhibitors. They can hear what's going well with their animals and perhaps their breeding program overall if they've entered a number of animals from their start.
Competitors travelled from Palmerston North and Blenheim to take part in the alpaca competition, and the pig competition also had a good turnout with similar numbers to past years. One of those taking part in the pig competition was 14-year-old Gus McLaughlin. He was primarily there for the social aspects of the event.
Well, some of the other younger people, you get to meet some others, and there's always some people that you already know anyway, but it's good to meet new people.
The past president of the show, Chris Herbert, says the social opportunity for rural people is a very important part of the show.
It's a social occasion for some of the exhibitors. It's their shop window, showing what they're doing with their genetics. So, but the social aspect of it is huge. There's been people that have been coming to this show and catching up for 30 or 40 years, and it's the only week of the year that they actually catch up with each other. They live at opposite ends of the island, so it's brilliant.
The president of the Canterbury A&P Association, Chris Harris, says not being able to open up to the public is a real blow, and they will now need to make use of the $1 million loan they'd arranged with the Christchurch City Council as a safety net in case they had to cancel.
It's a very big hit for us. We got the loan application tip, that's why we got it from the council. It'll keep us afloat, but it will be going backwards in debt. That's why we're definitely going to be hoping for the future for some very good shows, which we should have.
Mr Harris says normally the only thing they have to worry about is whether it is going to be too hot or too cold on show day, and he hopes next year that will be their biggest problem once more.
Let's get to your feedback now. This on the Taranaki COVID cases. Now, we revealed earlier in the program that it was a tip-off from someone in the community that brought health authorities to the family who originally didn't want to be tested, but after a few days did get tested and were confirmed to have COVID. This listener says it's disgusting that sick people won't get tested, and it takes a tip-off to get the test, as the bug can spread throughout the community. I won't be surprised if lockdown comes to the region. This situation is another reason to keep the Auckland border closed to all, they say. Religious aversion to the test, the dark ages are back. That's in response to the Medical Officer of Health, Jonathan Jarman, saying some people don't want to have a COVID test because of religious reasons. And this one, I had a PCR test today. It literally takes 20 seconds, is mildly annoying. Toughen up out there, that listener says. On the CBD and shopping and the fact that there's not many people in offices in downtown Auckland, so not many people turn up to the shops. This listener says, I won't shop in the malls. I'd go to the CBD to shop if there was free parking. The cost of that is why I don't shop there, and I don't want to catch a bus as that feels too risky. Another person says, sorry for the shop staff, but they are pleased for the environment that people aren't back to shopping.
RNZ News at 6. Kia ora, I'm Marama Tipole. Taranaki health officials believe the COVID-19 outbreak in the region poses a low to medium risk to public health. 6 COVID cases were only discovered when someone in the community reported the sick family in Stratford to health authorities. Taranaki DHB Medical Officer of Health, Jonathan Jarman, is urging people to get tested.
With this little cluster, one person was sick enough to be admitted to hospital. It was the sickest that he's ever been. So this isn't just a mild flu-like illness. This can be a disease that can kill people.
Dr Jarman told Checkpoint more information about the Stratford outbreak will be known when the latest test results are available. Hundreds of people queued for tests and vaccinations in Stratford today, following confirmation of 6 COVID cases in one household. Taranaki iwi have called for the region to go into lockdown, but the government says that's not necessary. Tom Kitchen reports.
It's been revealed 2 of the cases had recently been in Auckland, with one travelling there to pick up the other. Health authorities say they initially refused to get tested, but did so once a man was admitted to hospital. At a drive-in site run by the Ngāruahine Iwi Health Services and the Health Board, the queue of cars stretched around the block. Others waited in the rain at a walk-up testing site on the main street. The government says it has no plans to put the region into level 3 because health authorities know how the individuals became infected.
Unvaccinated school and early childhood teachers could be fined if they turn up to work next week. Everyone at a school who comes into contact with children must have their first COVID vaccination by Monday at the latest. The Education Ministry says anyone who fails to meet that deadline but still goes to work on Tuesday is committing an offence under a health order and could be fined. It says they should be asked to leave the school grounds. The Ministry says principals could contact the Teaching Council if the situation is not resolved or call the police if they feel the safety of staff or children is at risk. The country's largest nurses' union says Auckland is 1,000 nurses short and patients are at risk. The comment comes as 85 COVID patients are in hospitals and numbers are expected to climb. The Nurses Organisation spokesperson Christina Coling says there are not enough nurses even at this stage of the outbreak and the system's under enormous strain. She says it simply does not have the capacity to deal with the number of COVID cases who are self-isolating at home, with several hundred referrals to DHBs each day. She was speaking just before today's announcement of another 201 COVID cases. Pessimism has set in at the COP26 climate talks in Glasgow as they head into its final day. Ministers have taken over from negotiators, with discussions long into the night behind closed doors. While there have been wins on methane and deforestation, language calling for a phase-out of fossil fuels will likely be mixed, and discussions on international carbon markets are said to be stalling on similar grounds to previous summits. New Zealander Rod Oram says there is a frustration in the corridors outside negotiation rooms.
Certainly there's a fair degree of pessimism around on a whole number of issues. And also the developing countries are angrier than ever about the inability of developed countries to come up with even small sums of money to help them.
The summit is due to end early tomorrow morning New Zealand time, but could well drag on a day or more longer. A Southland fishing company has been fined and a boat confiscated for repeatedly setting nets in protected areas. The Ministry for Primary Industry says Jacob Fishing and skipper Philip Turner have been sentenced in the Invercargill District Court on 5 charges. The company has been fined $18,000 and the skipper more than $6,500 for fishing in marine protected areas and for removing fins from sharks and discarding the bodies at sea. The Ministry's Regional Fisheries Compliance Manager, Gareth J, says the penalties should send a strong message to all commercial fishers. An 89-year-old man from Rhode Island has fulfilled his dream to earn his PhD, becoming a physicist. He spent 20 years working towards his goal and almost a lifetime thinking about it. Manfred Steiner successfully defended his dissertation at Brown University recently. Growing up in Vienna, Mr. Steiner studied medicine after the Second World War, after his parents advised it'd be a better career in turbulent times. He says this is the most gratifying point in his life. It's 5 minutes past 6. The Black Caps coach Gary Stead is confident his team is up for the challenge presented by Australia in the T20 World Cup final. The Australians enjoyed a surprise win over the form team of the tournament, Pakistan, to advance to Monday morning's final in Dubai against New Zealand following the Black Caps semi-final win against England yesterday. Australia's 6th on the T20 World Rankings and weren't rated as title contenders, but Stead says the Black Caps are well aware of the challenge they pose.
They've got a bunch of guys who are real, match winners as well, and we're going to have to make sure that our planning, our scouting is right on point, and we've got really clear plans for all their players because they can rip a game open pretty quickly as well. But it's something that we've done well this tournament.
Meanwhile, Tim Seifert will replace the injured wicketkeeper batter Devon Conway in the Black Caps lineup for the final. Conway has a self-inflicted broken hand, which he suffered after punching his bat following his dismissal in the match against England. The Black Ferns have made 3 changes to their starting lineup for Sunday morning's test against France and Powell. Dice Faleafunga and Kelly Brazier return from injury, while Locke Maya Roos is promoted from the bench. Hooker Georgia Ponsonby is set to make her debut. And Brazil's beaten Colombia 1-0 to become the first South American side to qualify for next year's Football World Cup in Qatar. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Harry Sinclair, actor, director and former Front Lawn singer, selects the mixtape. Country Life follows a new bird highway of national significance, a corridor of forest linking habitats in the Remataka and the Ararangi Range on the other side of Wairarapa. And because Ben-Hur was published on this day in 1880, we've got a sonic tonic that's even bigger. On Nights, it's going to be epic. With me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Welcome back. You're with Checkpoint. Ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Taranaki is on tenterhooks after revelations a Stratford family tested positive for COVID-19 after refusing to be tested for days. The 6 cases were announced last night, but the government says at this stage there is no need to lock down the region. Checkpoint revealed earlier the 6 COVID cases were only discovered after someone in the community reported the sick family to health authorities after several days of positive wastewater tests. Health officials say the family, 3 adults and 3 children, were reluctant to be tested despite one having driven to Auckland at the end of October to pick up one of the others. They changed their mind after one of the family became seriously ill. That person is now in hospital. The other 5 are isolating at home. Only one of the 3 adults had been vaccinated. The Deputy Prime Minister, Grant Robertson, says the current health advice is to keep Taranaki at alert level 2.
We know how the case came to be, or how the virus came to be in Stratford. We know that it is currently confined to one family and one household. But as the day goes on, more interviews are undertaken, more investigations are done, and the public health team would update their information. But if you think about what happened in Christchurch at the beginning of October, similar situation there where somebody was there, we knew how they'd got the virus, we knew how the virus had gone there, and we knew enough about them to be able to say, we think this can be contained. So for now, we're working on that basis, but we continue to listen to the advice that we get.
The development comes amid increased focus on the home isolation regime, with the health minister acknowledging the system was not ready. Most people with the virus are now remaining at home rather than moving to MIQ, and 3 people in the last week have died while in home isolation. The nurses' organisation has warned that that number could rise, with community nurses under immense pressure. 85 people are currently in hospital with COVID-19. 11 of them are in intensive care units. But Mr Robertson says the system is not overwhelmed.
We have a conversation every single day about how the outbreak's been managed, and one of the things we talk about every single day is the capacity of the system to be able to do that. Workforce is clearly a really critical part of that, and the assurances that we've been given by the district health boards is that they are able to manage. Of course, when something like COVID comes along, it puts additional pressure on the system and on workforce. Throughout this outbreak, we've had people from other parts of New Zealand come in and support in Auckland, and we continue to look at how we can move workforce around. I am not underestimating the pressure that the health workforce in New Zealand has been under, in particular our nursing workforce, and they have done a magnificent job, and we continue to work with them to be able to make sure that we can support them. But the information we have that we request on a daily basis is that the system can cope.
And joining us now is Stratford Mayor Neil Volsky. Kia ora, Neil. How are you feeling sitting there at level 2? Safe enough, or would you like to see a shift?
Good evening, Lisa. I don't think a shift's on the card just at the moment. The health authorities have considered that today, and for the moment, the decision is to stay with alert level 2.
What was the turnout like today for testing?
The turnout's actually amazing. My office at the council building is right next to the testing centre, and I can tell you there was 2 very long streams of cars there the entire day. And I've just got some figures through in the last 10 minutes to say that there were 701 tests carried out in the region today, and of those, 335 were done in the Stratford.
Oh, we're just losing you a little bit, Neil, so I might get you to move around. If you're on the cell phone, you're dipping in and out a tiny bit, and we want to hear you. Hey, given you've just been given those updated testing figures, any news on the test results for the close contacts of the infected family?
I haven't seen the results of those as of yet, but I do understand that at least 2 of those 5 people are symptomatic. So that's not a good sign.
In terms of that family, Neil, how long did you know that they were the focus of health authorities' attention? Because we now know that the fact that they were ill, well, the health authorities were tipped off to that, and then later came to discuss with them having a test. Someone in the community reported that they were ill, and health authorities have known this for about a week, Grant Robertson said. So when were you told about the family?
My first knowledge of the family and the source was last night at around about 7:15.
Are you getting information quick enough?
Well, I think that information that came to me was that 6 people had tested positive, and they were all from one family. And I think that result was only released very late in the afternoon or early evening.
Yeah, I suppose my point is that if you look at the Ministry of Health website, there are several locations of interest, right, where members of this family have been to various supermarkets, several visits to the pharmacy over a number of days. And as I said, health authorities were aware of the fact that they were potentially the source of infection in the positive wastewater tests for a number of days. Should the community have been aware of that? Should you be aware of that?
I think I wasn't aware that the people had to those locations until that was released today. And it's certainly concerning because each of those are busy shops or businesses, and there will have been a lot of people in each one of them. So I guess the answer to your question is it concerning that people were potentially exposed or had contacts while in those locations? Yes, that's extremely concerning.
So what is your message to your community? This is a family that initially didn't want to be tested. Do you think there's more people out there who are reluctant to go and get tested when they're ill, and what would you say to them?
I think there's a combination of things there, two in particular. One being that there are some people who are just hesitant and need some assurance, and I'd really encourage them to go and get tested or vaccinated if they haven't already been. But also there's been a degree of complacency around vaccination, and I'm sure with the arrival of COVID that will certainly make some people jump into gear.
Appreciate your time this evening. That's the Stratford Mayor, Neil Volsky there. As we heard earlier in the program, they were expecting some tests, which they should have back by now, the Ministry of Health, but they say they're not going to report the results until tomorrow's update at 1 o'clock. And as you heard there, a number of the close contacts are symptomatic, showing symptoms of COVID. So we'll await those results. It's 6:15. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. The Auckland City Mission, Te Taupui Ata Whai, is worried about not meeting demand at Christmas as its team faces the ever-growing demand for support created by COVID restrictions. The mission staff fear they won't be able to provide up to 9,000 boxes of food and tens of thousands of presents for families who'd otherwise go without this festive season. Samantha G reports.
For the last 3 months, demand for the Auckland City Mission services is the highest it's been in the organisation's 100-year history. More than 16,000 food parcels are distributed every week. That's more than double what was being given out pre-COVID. Staff are working at capacity and with Christmas looming are worried about how they're going to meet the need in the community. Missioner Helen Robinson says it shows how many people are living without enough money for food.
We're conscious of people particularly who are on casual labour or even were on contract. People who have been receiving the wage subsidy, gratefully, but that if their rent or mortgage payments constitute a significant part of that what's then left over is very, very limited.
The City Mission plans to deliver 9,000 food parcels and 30,000 gifts in the 2 weeks leading up to Christmas.
That's truly our capacity. We are running at the most of what we can do, and in fact we've been doing the most of what we can do for the last 3 months. So this planning for Christmas is just truly the kind of the last draw of breath that the mission can give this year to respond to the level of need. Genuinely, I suspect that there is going to be more needs than what we can respond to.
The mission is seeking donations of money, food and Christmas presents to support those who are struggling. West Auckland Budget Service Operations Manager Fiona Snyder says access to food was an issue for nearly everyone that walked through the centre's doors.
Because food has become very expensive, our power's increased. Even our water seems to have got a little pricey as well. So our basics are expensive, let alone the rent. So we are finding that nearly every client that's coming through is needing assistance with food.
Women's Refuge Chief Executive Dr Ange Gerrard says since the pandemic began, people's needs had gotten more complex and they were facing tougher issues, mainly due to inadequate incomes and poor housing.
Domestic violence creates an environment of chaos in people's lives, and what we've seen with COVID is an additional layer of chaos, if you like. This don't know what's happening in the world, don't know what's happening in my world, don't know what's happening in my kids' world. It's added a whole new layer to
to that difficult environment.
She says Christmas is a particularly tough time, and kids at home on school holidays meant additional demands for food. Salvation Army's National Director of Community Ministries, John O'Bell, says he expects this Christmas season to be one of its busiest, as the charity is already seeing an increased demand for services.
There's definitely the financial hardship that people are experiencing, and part of that for us at Christmas time is trying to provide a bit of relief and hope, having some gifts, having some Christmas hampers that we're able to provide for people.
Child Poverty Action Group economic spokeswoman Susan St John says while food banks and charities played an important role in the community, they could not reduce poverty.
It's a horrible model. Obviously, we need private charity, particularly at the moment, because you have to meet the immediate need. But that's no long-term solution for a developed country. We have to move to a situation where people have enough money to cover their basic needs.
She says the government had the ability to make changes, particularly to the Working for Families tax credit system, to reduce child poverty.
It's crunch time at the COP26 summit. With one more day of official talks left, there is plenty of pessimism among New Zealanders about the outcome. Our climate reporter Hamish Cardwell has the story.
Negotiators at COP26 are working feverishly, possibly all night, to hammer out agreements. Massey University Climate Emeritus Professor Ralph Sims says he's seen wild things happen in these rooms.
The Saudi Arabian lady jumped on a table waving her placard because she wanted to make a point and say something. You get a huddle of 5 or 6 or 20 countries all trying to negotiate a single sentence, and it's all down to the wire.
One of the few New Zealand reporters in Glasgow is Rod Oram, who says there is frustration in the corridors of the negotiation rooms.
Certainly there's a fair degree of pessimism around on a whole number of issues. And also the developing countries are angrier than ever about the inability of developed countries to come up with even small sums of money to help them.
Inji Johnstone is in Glasgow with the Young Kiwis and Climate Contingent. She says she'd rather talks failed on international carbon markets, which would let countries sell surplus reductions, than a shabby deal passes.
There's been some proposals from different parties about different structures of what that could look like, but really damaging proposals. And so here on the ground, we're really trying to focus on how to ensure environmental integrity in whatever proposal goes forward.
Incredibly, a draft agreement released yesterday for the first time ever explicitly mentioned fossil fuels. But RNZ understands it almost certainly won't make it through to the final text. It will be torpedoed by Australia, Saudi Arabia and Russia. There have been positives, including pledges to slash methane emissions, end deforestation, phase out coal, and a surprise cooperation agreement between global giants China and the US. Kira Sherwood O'Regan, who is an iwi Chairs Forum nominee in the New Zealand delegation in Glasgow, says there are always wins and losses at these events. She says human rights and the rights of Indigenous and disabled people have gotten more play this summit, likely because of mahi from young Māori and Pacifica activists.
I think there is definitely a much larger awareness at this COP, and it's something that people are discussing a lot more, including parties and negotiators. So I think that's really positive to see.
Nobody knows yet what will be in the final agreement, but even the best case won't come close to keeping within 1.5 degrees of warming, which was the core point of the summit. But Professor Sims says that does not mean the talks are pointless.
The whole progress is step by step, and we have to keep going forward, and we have to keep having hope that we can manage the future climate, because it will impact on everybody in the world in one way or another. But certainly the outcome of this conference isn't going to solve the problem.
The summit is slated to end early Saturday morning New Zealand time, but could well drag on a day or more longer.
The All Blacks are preparing for the biggest challenge of their northern tour so far, taking on Ireland on Sunday morning. They've effectively used 2 different teams on tour, their second-string side beating the United States and Italy, with the top team outclassing Wales. Most of the team that played Wales have been selected for this weekend's clash with Ireland, though coach Ian Foster admits the All Blacks aren't the finished article just yet.
We're still a developing team, to be honest. I think we're still growing in what we want to do. And these are the games that you really put a marker down and you get the answers of where you're at in some aspects. So can't wait to give it everything and see what happens.
Bowden Barrett will start at first 5, but Foster insists he hasn't usurped Richie Mo'unga as the All Blacks' first choice number 10.
I got 2 quality 10s and I'm really happy with both of them. In a messy game, Richie showed some great touches last week and showed what a quality footballer he is. But we just feel that right now for what we want to do early, that Bodie's the one.
Ethan Blackadder's meteoric rise continues with the loose forward name to start at blindside. Foster believes Blackadder's physicality will be needed against an Ireland team that's on a high after crushing Japan 60 points to 5 last weekend.
It's a very physical, close-quarter game up here, and I think that suits them. We know it's going to be a battle. You know, the Irish pack's a tough pack. The breakdown's important, and the quality of your ball carrying and your defence is important. And in a couple of those areas, Ethan's made quite an impact for us.
Blackadder starts alongside number 8, Adi Savir, alongside Dalton Papali'i, who is preparing for another set-up in physicality against the Irish. Papali'i says the power of the Northern Hemisphere teams has been an eye-opener.
100%. I feel there's a lift in physicality, and playing the Welsh and how I felt after the game, I felt like I got hit by a bus. But it's good to get that exposure and to see what it's like playing these Northern Hemisphere teams. And the physicality is second to none, man. It's the way the game should be played, and I love it.
The All Blacks have lost to Ireland twice in the last 4 games they've played, with the most recent defeat coming in Dublin in 2018. As the International Climate Summit winds down, more than 20 countries are pushing back on a key part of an agreement on climate change. It's an example of how going green and staying green is easier said than done. CNN's Bill Ware visited a green development in Colorado that illustrates the challenge.
While they fuss and fight in Glasgow over the path to a carbon-neutral world, this gentleman knows how hard you have to fight just to build a net-zero neighborhood.
I pay about $6 every month for electricity.
Darlon Chang is an energy pioneer, battling to settle the greenest community in America, called Geos. Conceived as a clean energy utopia in the Denver suburb of Arvada, original plans called for nearly 300 homes, all powered, heated, and cooled only by what radiates down from the sun and up from the earth.
On a day when it's like 10 degrees outside and you have the windows open by 11 o'clock or so, you have close to 70 degrees in here.
It's very toasty in here.
Yeah.
Look at this. Our homes are offset. This is south.
It's all the brainchild of an Austrian engineer named Norbert Kleibel, who first staggered the plots in a checkerboard so that each tightly constructed home, free of drafts and leaks, would get maximum free heat from the sun.
We harvest the Colorado sun in the wintertime. When the sun is low down there, it floats in here and heats up the entire house.
This means you need fewer solar panels to power the house and your cars, and 8 hours of battery backup, since gas stoves can create the same amount of indoor pollution as living with a chain smoker, and since natural gas is mostly made of planet-cooking methane, Rule 1 of Geos would be no gas, all electric.
So this here is the geothermal unit.
Using liquid to bring up energy from the Earth's hot core, this machine heats and cools the house with virtually no pollution.
If you go down to the core of the Earth, it's as hot there as it is on the surface of the sun.
And it's closer, it's right there.
Yes, yes.
It's always on. Darlon believes geothermal will be the energy of the future, and he should know. He spent over 15 years as an alternative fuel engineer at ExxonMobil.
I saw no reason why we weren't using the drilling technologies we were using at ExxonMobil to drill for hot rocks rather than drill for oil and gas.
But the company wasn't moving away from fossil fuels fast enough for his sense of urgency. And he says when hurricanes knocked power from his Houston home and his homeowners association banned solar panels, he quit, packed, and moved to the greener pastures of Geos. The 28 completed homes with goats instead of lawnmowers felt like proof of a better way. But then Norbert was forced to sell the rest of Geos in a divorce settlement. And despite their fierce objections, the new developer is now installing gas lines for the next phase of homes.
A legendary British footballer is taking charge of one of the most historic Premier League clubs. Stephen Gerrard, a Liverpool club legend, has been appointed manager at Aston Villa. The BBC's Nigel Adderley reports.
Runs to Gerrard. Gerrard looks at the shot. Fantastic goal by Stephen Gerrard. Miracle man brings Liverpool level.
Stephen Gerrard seemed to make heroic acts seem routine during his career as a Liverpool player. 9 trophies were won during over 700 games to cement his iconic status in the most popular league in the world. Now he's back, not with Liverpool, but with Aston Villa, another club brimming with history, but one which is currently struggling to match expectations. It would have been easy for Gerrard to enjoy a comfortable retirement on the television punditry sofa, but the desire he showed as a player was in evidence when he took the manager's job in Scotland at Glasgow Rangers, a huge club who had fallen on hard times. He was an undoubted success and led them to their first league title in a decade. The England manager, Gareth Southgate, a one-time teammate, wasn't surprised.
Stephen's always had fantastic leadership qualities, great drive. We know the number of games that he's led for club and country where he made the difference in really important moments. He's had a fabulous start to his managerial career. He leaves one massive football club to join another.
And the former Aston Villa midfielder Ray Houghton thinks now is a good time for Gerrard to continue his progression.
Stephen done extremely well when he went up to Scotland, tried to overhaul the dominance that Celtic had. Last season he done it, won the league, didn't lose a league game. And I think now he felt it was time for him to come back to the Premier League.
Gerrard has never hidden his desire to one day return to Liverpool as their manager. Despite the reverence he is held in there, he'll know sentiment alone would never be enough to achieve that.
Let's get to some of your feedback before we head off. A lot of you getting in touch about open-air dining and why restaurants can't open to outside customers. Vicky says, I'd love you to put your cameras in to see the McDonald's kitchens. If they can cook for the masses and open their kitchens, then he should be able to. This is the restaurateur in Parnell who wants to use his outside tables. Paul says, I'm thinking it'd be hard to define an acceptable outdoor area. I've been to cafes, bars and restaurants that have an outdoor that is 95% walled, roof shade and windbreaks. Someone else says, ridiculous double standard, indoors shopping okay, but outdoor cafe not. How is this following the science? Roslyn reckons, yeah, it all seems fine, but what about the toilets if diners need to use them? Good point, but they're using the loos in the malls as well, Roslyn. And Barry's got in touch to say, just listening to the interview with the head of Hospo New Zealand, trust us, we know what I'm doing. I'm sure that's what the captain of the Titanic said when it set sail, says Barry. Have a fantastic weekend. We'll be back Monday.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The Mayor of Stratford says it's extremely concerning that people were potentially exposed to COVID-19 in locations of interest this week. There are 6 COVID cases in one household in the Taranaki town. Local health officials believe the outbreak poses a low to medium risk to public health. Hundreds of people queued for tests and vaccinations in Stratford today. And Taranaki iwi have called for the region to go into lockdown, but the government says that's not necessary. Those are the headlines. Our next news and weather is at 7.
Take the pulse of the day's news every